Hey everyone, welcome back to Live at Det 835. I'm your host, Cadet Coonrod, and today we got a very special guest, Technical Sergeant Mesina. So, Sergeant Mesina, you've been with the detachment for about a year now? A little over a year or a little
A little bit under eight, 9 months, I believe.
And where are you coming from?
Coming from the Pentagon.
Oh, okay. So, literally what we talk about on a daily basis, everyone calls it the big Air Force. I just call it operational. We just call it the operational. What was that transition like going from, working in the Pentagon to, university life?
Oh, the Pentagon is probably one of the. It's definitely the hardest assignment I've been to, but it's the one assignment that I would do again. The hardest, and typically you'd move away from an assignment that that was very difficult. You move away from it, but I would go back. You get to experience a lot of the things that you typically would never see at a tactical level or base level.
Mm-hmm.
So some of the similarities from the Pentagon to here, in a more university type of environment. I used to teach
Mm-hmm.
as a functional area manager. I used to teach, but I used to teach master sergeants, captains, majors, and lieutenant colonels. And then I moved here. Now I'm teaching future officers.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's pretty awesome.
Yeah, absolutely. And you said that despite how difficult it was, you would go back. What made the job particularly difficult, aside from like what we're like, oh, Pentagon, like that's like the pinnacle of what it is to be in the military. So can you like take us through that?
The overall task saturation
Mm-hmm.
is unimaginable. It's a task list that never seemed to end.
Mm-hmm.
The reason why I would go back is the impact. You don't necessarily look at the day-to-day taskers that you typically do on a normal basis, right? But you get to create, like, so for instance, you get policy. If you review a policy, policy doesn't apply internally just for your unit, but you'll have to consider all other 90 installations because they'll be following the policies that you create. So it's the impact and the vast coverage of what you'll be able to kind of see as they execute some of those things that you've kind of developed. So.
And were you able to be a part of any of the development of like these policies, like hands-on, like you actually wrote certain new regulations or guidelines?
So functional area manager, what that really means is you're the subject matter expert specifically for your field, right?
Mm-hmm.
Some of the policies, such as the Air Force tactics, techniques, and procedures, specifically for the Chaplain Corps, we do have a readiness that relates to how the Chaplain Corps deploys.
Yeah.
So we have like a 52104. So those are the policies specifically that impacts, or that I've developed that impacts my career field.
Yeah. So how do you feel whenever you have a cadet? I mean, I've never done this before, but a cadet tells you, "Oh, I forgot to respond to that email, even though I had like 24 hours." Given the fact that you're coming from the Pentagon, you're saying task saturation is the thing. Like, no matter how much you complete day to day, it's always going to be more and more. Like, how do you respond to that? Just kind of like, you're not really that task saturated, but their perception and their perspective is not quite what you have.
I think the approach and the response for that is I'm not very familiar with what a cadet really does outside of what ROTC. Whether you're taking a more advanced degree in comparison to others, right?
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if I'm in religious affairs, so I'm very understanding in terms of, hey, there could be simply something that happened or that's happening that we just don't know, right? Onesie twosies in terms of responding, of course, we ask you what the reason behind it.
Yeah.
But if you don't have a very good one and you don't let us know, then how can we be understanding if you don't let us know, right?
Yeah.
So I don't know what I don't know. So you have to communicate with us why the 24-hour response wasn't why you didn't meet that specific requirement.
And you said that you came back from a religious affairs background, but you initially were LRS.
I was.
And then what motivated you to go into the religious affairs, religious background? Not really sure what the AFSC for that is, so excuse me if I butchered that.
No worries. So I'm about to hit my 12-year mark.
Okay.
March 26th. It's coming up here in 5 days. Yeah. March 26th is going to be my 12-year mark in the Air Force. So first 5.5 years of my career, I was in LRS. I was a 2G0X1 logistics planner. We are the loggies, and it was, in layman's term, our way was to deploy the base. Yeah. So we receive all the taskings. Of course, we disperse them out and execute them as they come. That was that job on a personal level took a toll on my family. And 5.5 years is, so I was on a 6-year contract of my enlistment. After 5 years, there's a specific gap that allows you to cross-train into a different career field. And it's more of like an incentive, right? Because the Air Force wants to keep you because you've been here, you've been in the Air Force 5 years going on 6. We've already invested enough on you. Hey, if maybe this is an opportunity for you. So personally, the chaplain corps or religious affairs is the 5R, 5R0X1 is the AFSC. It helped me throughout those times because the Air Force was taking a toll on me, and then it affected my family. Yeah. So what I did was, it was the only AFSC that I volunteered to cross-train into, though you had multiple preferences. Yeah. And I said that if the Air Force is willing to give me a chance, and they allow me to cross-train into the religious affairs, that I would give the Air Force a second chance.
No, I love that. I mean, that's what kind of motivated me to stay in as long as I did. Was I was fortunate enough to get Shaw, and then from Shaw to Hawaii. So, I was like, okay, we're coming up. And then from Hawaii, I was thinking, like, I'm getting out. I'm done with the Air Force. I don't like weather anymore. And I was going to go to ROTC because one of my friends was doing it. He's like, dude, you can do this. And at that point in time, I was like, you know what? I'm 6 years in. I'm not that committed to retiring. Well, here comes the Air Force. They're like, all right, what do you think about this? And it said Germany. And I was like, I think Germany is pretty good deal with the devil, so to speak. And so, yeah, we went to Germany. And the funny thing about it is, like, that's when COVID hit. And so, like, everything was shut down. So we got, like, 18 months out of it. But after Germany, I kind of got to that same part of, like, okay, I've given it to the Air Force. I'm giving what I can to the Air Force, and it's starting to take that toll not on just on my family but myself. I need to change. And I was like, maybe a different assignment. Saw the assignment list, and I was like, you know what? I'm not in it for the career field anymore. The people do make it worth it from day to day, but it's still just too much. So I got out and then came into ROTC. Speaking of ROTC, I saw the OTS package, and I was not about that. But per the last thing that Sergeant Martin had said, correct me if I'm wrong on this, he was like, he also wanted to do OTS, and your name got dropped saying, like, you're actually submitting a package to OTS. So did you submit that already, or?
So there's a window that you'll have to submit your package. So the current right now, one of the requirements is to have a letter of recommendation endorsed by a wing commander equivalent. So ours, so right now it is up at region, and then it'll go up to the home center commander. So it's a 1-star, a brigadier general. What happens with the LOR, it has a rack and stack. So it'll indicate you are, 10 out of 40, 1 out of 40, depending on, based on the package that you submitted. And then they'll sign it and then come back down. There's a window it's a window within a window within a window. Yeah. So there's a window to request access to a specific site, and then you'll have access to that site, and then there's a window for you to submit your package. That's coming up here. 5th of April is when I can request to have access to that site to put all my package in. But that also depends on the letter of recommendation from the Brigadier General too.
Yeah, and then this is one of the questions that I asked Sergeant Martin. I asked him to like look into the camera real quick, and if you could guesstimate, how thick do you think your application via OTS, if it was done the old-fashioned way, would be?
If it was done the there's tons of paperwork. So I literally built a folder. I built a checklist and I built a folder to ensure that every paperwork, you have to be very meticulous with each paperwork. It's very, very specific. So for instance, they'll give you an example, like a template.
Yeah.
And then later on, it'd be like, use that as a template, but it's really not that office, it's this office. So make sure it's corrected, right? So it's very, it's easy to make a mistake on. I would easily say, so there's an issue with uploading the files because it's too large of a file.
Yeah.
I would say I have, it's at least maybe 50, 60 pages of things that you have to review.
It's funny you talk about like how meticulous it was, because I remember when I started like going through it, there was like no one giving me guidance when I was thinking like officer as a route. And all I got was like, go to your education office, go to your education office, go to your education office. Like, okay, be your own advocate. I start filling out the paperwork. I'm following the template. I get through like 6 pages. And then there's a part in like the how to like complete the document that was like the first 6 pages that I did weren't even necessary. And I think at that moment I was like, yeah, I don't think I'm going to make it, because I just devoted all this time to figuring out where I was going to elementary school, how many elementary schools I had transferred to. It was just like a bunch of stuff that I thought they needed, but no, they definitely didn't need that stuff. And that's what confirmed it. I was like, yeah, maybe I'm not ready for OTS. Even when talking to Sergeant Martin, like we were talking about his package, which is just like his credentials throughout the Air Force. And that's what I didn't have confidence in. I didn't have a lot of awards or accolades. And then he was like, I don't feel very confident. I remember one time we talked about it, and you're like, I don't know if my package is that competitive. So if it's that daunting, even to someone like you who's worked in the Pentagon, do you think that there might be a slight misconception on how easy that process actually is amongst the DET? Because I don't know how many times you've heard a cadet be like, man, I'm not going to do ROTC. I'm going to graduate and just go OTS. What would be, I saw the smart, what would be your opinion on something like that?
So I know EAs came out, but I saw, and I'm reminded consistently that it is about 5% chance to get accepted in OTS. Mm-hmm. So really step back and compare that with ROTC. I'm not saying ROTC it's definitely the lengthiest way to earn a commission, but it's a higher chance than 5.
Yeah, and that's coming off of the back end of what, 50%, 55, depending on like STEM and everything I think I said. Previous year was like 90, was it? It was pretty high, wasn't it? I mean, I think all but like 1 or 2 people didn't get selected, and that was because of medical and or, just didn't meet the thing. So I can only imagine if we had a class of 28 again and then only 1 in 1/4 got selected for that. That'd be pretty wild. Yeah, that's a good comparison. I didn't know it was 5%. I thought it was a lot lower than that. And does it have anything to do with your degree as well? Like, because in ROTC, we could have a history, we could have sociology, math, and then we get our STEM degrees. Is it very picky with the degree going into OTS as well?
So similar to ROTC, of course, you always have to reference the AFROTC, right? There are some very specific degrees. Most common one is probably engineers. You have to have an engineering degree in order to apply for one of the engineering AFSCs, right? There are some who are a little bit more lenient, or is lenient the right word, that are willing to accept other degrees.
So let's take it back to LRS was taking a toll on your family. I'm guessing a lot of stress, inducing a lot of stress. Went to the Chaplain Corps, and then Pentagon, which also had a lot of stress How did you cope with that? Did you learn more techniques having joined the chaplain corps, or did you already have something in place that kind of helped you alleviate the stress that was coming forward?
So habits has always been. I'm very. Most humans are very habitual, right? My habits is what is my way of decompressing. So whether that's I wake up at 3 in the morning, whether I read, right? I spend some quiet time. I work out. So that would be my only way of decompressing. Spending time with family. One way to decompress out of work, I would say probably do like a to-do list and have that on your computer or desktop or something like that.
To-do list to like what to do here or to do at home or both?
No, just for work. So when you close down your computer at the end of the day, make sure that you have everything that you need to do, and that there are specific requirements that you need or want to actually complete those taskers. But once you leave wherever you're working, you leave it there, and that is probably the work-life balance that you'll face in the military.
Yeah, I think we've had conversations in class like that as far as I think it was during the NCO panel. It's kind of scary how often it gets repeated about work is going to be there tomorrow. It's like no matter how much you get done, I guess not even it doesn't really matter the level that you're at. I'm sure that you can complete every tasker that you have today, and you can come in tomorrow and be like, you know what, or not tomorrow, but Monday, you'll be like, hey, I was good. I can just, and then are you gonna have more?
There's always more. There's always more. So there's different taskers, or there are things that you have to maintain throughout, right? Yeah. Whether that's additional duties, most commonly. So those are the type of stuff that no one will ever tell you to do, but you had to do them. There are some that you have to do monthly, quarterly. So those are the things you have to be mindful of as you move forward, so that no one has to tell you what to do.
Yeah, I used to like it whenever I forget what it's called now. My deployment readiness status, DRS, I think, when it went all green, because I knew I didn't have any CBTs or any appointments to bother me throughout the day. But at one point in time, after I got back from deployment, which I think you served in an opposing squadron as I did, because you were part of the 379th. What was it?
Civil engineer.
Yeah, so civil engineer. I was part of the 379th. Was it operational support squadron? Expeditionary operational support squadron. So, what years were you there in Qatar?
Qatar. So, my daughter was 1 when I left, and she was 2 by the time I came back. So it was 16 to 17. 16 to 17.
Okay, you were there right before I was, because I had gotten there end of 18 going into 19, like right before the world went crazy. I was like, yeah, deployment, and I came home, I'm gonna go vacation, and then at the very last vacation it was like the world is closing, and I was like, all right, that's it's been fun. But how was your time out in the sandbox?
No, the duty is always fun.
Yeah.
The duty is always fun. So LRS, and then it was force protection. They typically call it babysitting. What it does is you have to follow around other workers that goes into the base, and it's really just for security purposes, right? Yeah. And it was under a different squadron. So my very first achievement medal as an airman was given to me by a civil engineer commander. So that was pretty awesome. I thoroughly loved the deed.
Yeah, I was gonna ask because I saw the civil engineering and I was like, don't think he was a part of that. And then that makes much more sense. You were part of the security detail. How was that, like day to day? Were they like 12-hour shifts or something like that, or was yours different?
It varies depending on when they would work or what job site you're working. There's stuff, so don't be fooled by like them coming in and they need security details. Some of those are like master electricians.
Yeah.
really like high level degrees, right? Because they're really working on the base. So some details you could start like I would say maybe 8 and then leave at 4. Some of those would be that way, but I followed. I had to escort like the dump trucks one time, and it started at like 4 a.m.
Yeah.
and then it would end at like 2. So it really varies depending on what time those workers are actually coming.
And like how proficient they are with what they're doing. So did you I know I had some of the best numbers in my life when I was in the LUD because all you did was work, eat, and then work out.
Yep.
So how did you fare inside the gym?
So routine was super, super good.
Yeah.
Even you would know what you're gonna eat the next day. It becomes it becomes the same food, right? It's the same. It's the food is definitely scheduled, just like my gym time. It allowed me to focus a lot more on working out. I had ample time, since it's I think it's about 12 hours ahead of time, so I got to work on some of my schoolwork while I was there. But gym time, I think everyone wants to work out once they go to deploy. So
You know what? I thought that would be a mentality that most people would share when you go out to deploy because, well, one, the Wi-Fi. I know I'm complaining Air Force here. The Wi-Fi was terrible in the dorm room. You know, everybody's on Netflix, so you're like, all right, this movie. It's like watching the Jake Paul fight. Like it was just everyone's getting disconnected the entire time. So there's not really much to do because playing so many games of pool, hanging out in the day room, you know, it's just. I would say that when I first got there, I was like in there for like maybe an hour a day, maybe less. Near the end of the deployment, I had no problem being in the gym for like 2 hours. And some people were like, that's way too much. I was like, I was in there with my friends and we would just maybe joke, maybe too much, but it was just a great time. Would you say, did you start doing bodybuilding before you got to LUD or after?
no, before. So I turned pro in bodybuilding the age of 22. So I'm about to turn 35 this year. I turned pro, so I joined in March 2013. I turned pro November of 2012, so right before I entered the military. November 2012, so about 5 months before I joined is when I turned pro in bodybuilding.
So if I may ask, like, why not just keep going to the bodybuilding scene and like making your name for yourself? You know, being the next Rich Piani or Jay Cutler, maybe even like the next Ronnie Coleman.
I personally don't think professional bodybuilders make a lot of money.
You're not wrong.
Right?
You're not wrong at all.
Additionally, so bodybuilding takes a lot of toll on the body. If you didn't know, getting down to like 4%, 6% body fat, none of those guys are ever that shredded. None of those guys have ever stays that way, right?
Yeah.
They have a dieting plan that's like, whether that's 3-4 months before the show, so they have to start cutting down. I had renal issues. I had renal issues. My body was taking a toll from dieting, working out, and then, so for instance, one of the things that you have to do is you have to have paper thin skin. So that means you have to dry out the water from subcutaneous of your skin, right? That means you're cutting out water. The last 2-3 days, you're probably drinking a cup of water.
Sounds like most of our cadets here, we have to remind them on a day-to-day basis that they need it to live. So I think they might have that down pat.
But it was super hard. And I don't think if I continue doing bodybuilding, I don't think I could function in the Air Force.
I think that's fair. I think you have a lot of people that are in the Air Force that try to be the influencers, the physique influencers, but the reality of it is, I mean, not like you said, attainable. It's not. You can't sustain it. Not that I ever got that lean. The leanest I was ever been since I was like 16 was my first year here in ROTC. People like to say that I ate myself when they see a picture of me when I first joined to now. I was like 160, 165, And they're like, why don't you do that again? I'm like, dude, it's not fun. My diet, I was like a dog. Chicken and rice, egg whites, and if I was a good boy that day, maybe some sugar-free syrup, and then a lot of cardio. And they're like, well, don't you like it? I was like, no, I don't really like running. I like doing it, and I like some flavor in my food occasionally. I actually got a little too gratuitous with pizza lately. But that's all right. So that's why you didn't go into pro bodybuilding, and now we know, all of the debt knows that you're going from enlisted potentially to the dark side. How do you feel about that?
Enlisted to the dark side?
Yeah.
Commissioning?
Yeah.
With the OTS
That's what
package
they
and
call
all?
it, the dark side.
Right. How do I feel about that? Oh, I'm super excited. I'm up for a challenge. I really am. I get bored super easily. Right? 3 AFSCs. I was a 2G, 5R, Pentagon. I volunteered for the Pentagon. I was there as a staff sergeant, right? Came out as a tech. ROTC instructor. So very first ROTC instructor in my career field. Very first ROTC instructor here at Det 835, right? I'm up for a challenge.
Okay, so something new, always going for the next thing, very ambitious. No, that's all good stuff. I think that's going to give everyone a new perspective of who you are. If you didn't know, they usually confuse you with me or me with you whenever you're turned around.
I see that.
Oh, you can? But I think also there's some things that maybe they're too afraid to ask you. I don't know why. Maybe it's the stripes. Maybe it's the sitting behind the desk where no one can see you. Couldn't tell you. But I think it'll bring a new light to who you are and what you do here at the detachment. So we really appreciate you being on the podcast. Can't wait to see what else you do here. Appreciate it, Sergeant Mesina.
Thank you for having me.
All right.